We're getting together with our My MS family members again tonight to talk to Glenn Warren. Glenn Warren of Vaughan and Associates, and Glenn is here to talk to us tonight about the disability tax credit and the child disability benefit. The floor is all yours, Glenn. Tell us about yourself. Start there.
Thanks, Trish. I've worked with Bob Vaughan since 2012. We got together because in the financial world, we had a mutual regional vice president for one of our insurance companies that we work with. And he knew what I was doing down here in London, and he knew what Bob was doing up in Keswick. And he said, you guys really need to get together and meet. Bob was doing a lot of financial planning 101 and a lot of work with the MS Society and Canadian Mental Health. And on my side, I was doing a lot of work with disability tax credit and registered disability savings plans. We had a coffee together and the rest is history. We've worked together ever since. He's been a great mentor to me on the life side. And going forward, we've done a lot of work for groups like yourselves. My background, I was safety manager for Sterling Trucks in St. Thomas. We had approximately 2,400 employees at the peak of our background, or at the peak of our history. And we got that phone call one morning at 5:30 in the morning saying, hey, by the way, you guys are closing. So for me, it was a matter of looking for a different industry, and I loved finance, so this is where I came. I didn't want to be that person who knocked on the door, so I looked for a different vehicle in which to present myself as a specialist. And my disability management on the manufacturing side really helped me in going through the disability tax credit and having it become part of, an integral part of my business model. One of the psychologists that we were working with for our kids, he actually introduced my wife and I to the disability tax credit. He asked, because of my new career choice, if I knew anything about this. And of course, like everybody, we said no. And he introduced and walked us through it. So we thought we would apply. After we applied, we were declined. We applied a second time, we were declined a second time. The third time we decided, let's go back and talk to the psychologist who happens to be a family friend. He showed us everything that we were doing incorrectly. The third time we were applied, we ended up getting $84,000 back for the disability tax credit. And that's why it became very important in us sharing this as part of our business model. Once Bob and I got together and we started doing larger groups, the rest is history. We've just exploded. We have over $8 million back for families. We have over just about $6 million in registered disability savings assets for families, and countless programs that we put together to help people with their financial planning with disability in mind. With the disability tax credit, most people have seen this form here on the right. It is the T2201 Disability Tax Credit Certificate. And when you apply for it, it's a very difficult application process. You have to have your doctor involved in order to certify the form, and then Canada Revenue has to approve what your doctor says. The difficulty is Canada Revenue doesn't understand the medical side of things because they're not doctors, and doctors don't understand the tax side of things because they're not tax specialists. With that, it becomes a very complicated process, and this is a video we put together for MS.
Caution to take an inordinate amount of time to perform your physical activities of daily living. These can include walking, dressing, meal preparation,
Glenn, why don't you talk us through that video, because we really can't hear it.
You can't hear it at all?
What we hear is garbled.
Okay, it's a very short video. I'll just go to the next slide.
Thanks.
No problem. The video basically is just telling us some of the symptoms, and I'm going to go over the material anyway. With the disability tax credit, where we are today is we're working with information that was developed by the Technical Advisory Committee way back in 2004. So approvals that happen today are based on the information that the Technical Advisory Committee put together in 2004 to help Canada Revenue manage and maintain the disability tax credit approvals and denials through the system. In 2017, this program was reinstated after it was disbanded in 2006. They figured they had everything completed. In 2007, after the committee was disbanded, Dr. Karen Cohen, she was the Executive Associate Director for the Canadian Psychological Association. She put together a letter that you can see on the right-hand side here that helps medical practitioners determine how they can apply the disability tax credit and determine whether or not a client or a patient may be eligible for that tax credit. Basically, what they did is they identified clearly what a marked restriction was, and that you needed to have a marked restriction in one or more of the basic activities of daily living, which include your vision, speaking, hearing, elimination, walking, feeding, dressing, performing the mental functions necessary for everyday life, or life-sustaining therapy. Each of these activities of daily living, you either need to be unable to perform one of those activities, or it simply takes you longer than somebody who doesn't have an impairment. It's that straightforward. The quality that Canada Revenue is still struggling with is what is an inordinate amount of time. Life-sustaining therapy is kind of a notch above. This would be for people who have type 1 diabetes, where they're taking insulin. Kidney dialysis is another example. Cystic fibrosis, the ventilation therapy. Basically, it has to support a vital life function, and you have to reach that, receive that therapy at least 3 times per week, and it has to take at least 14 hours of your time per week. And that has to be dedicated towards the actual therapy itself. So where people are using a ventilator at night for sleep apnea, that would not qualify because you're not taking away from your lifestyle in order to support that therapy. Also, in 2006, the Technical Advisory Committee clarified what a significant restriction was. And they included within that significant restriction criteria the ability to have 2 or more significant restrictions equal a marked restriction, because it was very difficult prior to 2006 to get an approval for the disability tax credit. After this, you don't necessarily have to have a marked restriction in any one activity of daily living now. You can have 2 or more significant restrictions, and those could equal a marked restriction, provided your doctor says so and believes that. Some of the marked restrictions that we can see and that Canada Revenue gives as an example: visual acuity in your eyes is 2200 or 660 or less on the Snellen chart, or your field of vision is less than 20 degrees. Speaking, you either rely upon another means of communication such as sign language or symbol board, or substantially all of the time, or even in a quiet setting, a person talks with you and they have to repeat several sentences several times, and it takes them much longer to convey what they're trying to say to you. Hearing, marriage does not qualify, just saying. From that standpoint, my wife said that I would be eligible for everything, but that's not true. With regard to hearing, you have to rely upon lip reading or sign language despite using a hearing aid to understand a spoken conversation. Or you must simply have somebody raise their voice and repeat words and phrases in order for them to understand what you're saying to them. Elimination, you require another person to assist you or attend your ostomy appliance on a daily basis, or you're experiencing some incontinence and some bladder issues, and substantially all the time you require somebody to help you, or it takes you longer to manage and maintain your incontinence daily. From a walking standpoint, if you use a wheelchair or a scooter outside of the home because you just can't walk any larger distance, you would require, you'd be eligible for the disability tax credit. If you can walk 100 meters, but it takes you substantially longer than somebody who doesn't have the impairment that you're facing, you have to stop because of shortness of breath or because of pain or fatigue, all or substantially all of the time, you would qualify. From a feeding standpoint, feeding is a difficult category because a lot of people always think that feeding is the actual act of eating your meal, which is not necessarily true. Feeding can also include the preparation of a meal. However, some examples that Canada Revenue uses, you require tube feedings all of the time for nutritional sustenance. So you use a gastric tube in order to inject a meal supplement in order to keep nutrition coming into your body. Or you require extra time, more time than another person, to prepare meals for yourself on a daily basis due to significant pain or decreased strength and dexterity in your upper limbs. You can't stand at a stove or counter to prepare a meal, something along those lines. Dressing, you can't dress on your own. You need assistance from somebody else. Due to pain, stiffness, and decreased dexterity, you require an inordinate amount of time to dress on a daily basis. These are all physical examples of marked restrictions for a lot of the key activities of daily living. Performing mental functions is a little bit more difficult, but still very clear after we utilize the letter from Dr. Karen Cohen. With mental functions, we look at the complete set of adaptive functions, memory, and problem-solving, goal-setting, and judgment. Now, right on the disability tax credit form, they indicate that a restriction with problem-solving, goal-setting, or judgment that markedly restricts your adaptive functioning, your ability to take care of yourself or to maintain your health and safety or to be able to initiate and respond in social situations. If you have a problem with that aspect, you would be automatically qualified. I will clarify that more momentarily. Performing mental functions, some of the examples that Canada Revenue uses as a marked example: you're unable to leave the house all or substantially all of the time due to anxiety despite medication and therapy. Agoraphobia is a prime example of that. Sometimes MS, because you're so anxious about what you're going through. You know it's hot outside. You know there's so many things going on. You don't want to go out, so you choose to stay home instead. You have to extend your energy in a better manner than what you could spend it by doing something else. You're independent in some aspects of daily living. However, despite medication and therapy, you need daily support or supervision in order to accurately interpret your environment. Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, quite often we do programs for those organizations, and this is one of the go-tos that we use in that circumstance. You're incapable of making a common simple transaction, such as a purchase at a grocery store without assistance. Whether you can't make change, you don't understand the concept of money, physically going in and carrying your groceries back out. These are all things that limit your abilities that should be considered in your application process. Someone experienced psychotic episodes several times a year. Given the unpredictability of the psychotic episodes and defining symptoms, you require daily supervision. When somebody has bipolar and I meet with them, quite often, I will utilize other people within the program in order to ensure the protection of that person and the person that they want to be receiving any funds or anything from a disability tax credit RDSP standpoint. Sometimes when somebody can't anticipate the consequences of their behavior when interacting with others. Again, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia is a really large program that we've done for people and experience in using that actual example of a marked restriction. All of these marked restrictions that I've just told you are all examples of marked restrictions that Canada Revenue uses within their guide. When we go back and look specifically at the Technical Advisory Committee and MS with regard to the disability tax credit, within that letter, you can see in the highlighted paragraph, Dr. Karen Cohen has identified a paragraph. Sorry, I can't read that on the screen, but I will read part of it to you. And it says, many disabilities of a psychological or neurological nature have multiple symptoms which combine to restrict several activities, even though each activity is not markedly restricted on its own. The Technical Advisory Committee recommended that the cumulative effects of an impairment on multiple activities of daily living render a person eligible for the disability tax credit, even if there is not a marked restriction on its own. For example, the motor problems, fatigue, and depression of MS might combine to create restrictions in walking, dressing, and mental functions. The sum totals of these restrictions is marked, even though the restrictions in walking, dressing, and mental functions may not be marked on their own. This recommendation was changed in legislation and implemented in the administration of the disability tax credit. Now, this was the letter that came out in 2007 after the Technical Advisory Committee changed everything and made recommendations in 2004. This is a letter that we utilize when we're sending a disability tax credit program via a doctor to Canada Revenue in support of why we think an individual may be eligible.
I'd just like to pause and say, woohoo, Dr. Karen Cohen.
Yeah, it was a great article. When you look at disability tax credit, this is an example of what the value is of applying for the disability tax credit and possibly obtaining that approval. Now, each of these was individual based on the individual and the family circumstances and the income within each family. So if you look at the beginning column here, you see brain injury was $10,096. We went down, there's Down syndrome, $24,047. We'll slide over to the middle column, multiple sclerosis, $27,655. You see schizophrenia, $27,482. When we go to the third column, you start seeing some larger numbers. Developmental delay, $103,044. That was for one family, 3 children, all approved for developmental delay. Intellectual delay, 3 children, all approved, $73,010. This was a really interesting one because there was no taxable income there for the family. This was all child disability benefit that they received. Autism, you can see developmental delay again. There's $84,598. That was my family when we had our 3 kids approved for ADHD. It was actually ADHD. 2 had learning disabilities and 1 has oppositional defiance disorder. From that standpoint, that was a great day for us. My wife called me up and said, "You'll never believe what's in my bank account." She said, $84,598. I said, "What? $88,498. I was happy. And then she said, 84,000. This was where we decided that we wanted to add this as part of our business model. And it's done great for us ever since. But you can really see where the child disability benefit has enhanced a lot of these programs for the families. When we look at the child disability benefit, there's a supplemental benefit guide that Canada Revenue looks at, and it's triggered by the amount of income that a family has and the amount of children that might be eligible. So where a child is approved and they have a family income of $70,000, if they had 1 child, they would get $241.30 a month. If there are 2 children, they would get $482.95 per month, retroactive to the year that they're approved for. So if we go back one more slide, these are all retroactive. We were able to go at least 2 to 10 years back retroactively in order to generate these refunds for the family. Where we do the child disability benefit, going back, this is added to the child disability benefit, or sorry, to the disability tax credit benefit as two different tax refunds. It's based on family income up to $242 a month as of July 2021, and that's per eligible child based on the scale. So if you look at my wife and I, when we got approved, we were in a position where my income was just stopped because they closed our manufacturing facility. We were based on her income solely. So we were looking at 3 kids getting approved. We received $631 a month, approximately, retroactively 10 years for each of our three children, on top of getting the tax money back for each of those years. So it was a fantastic experience and understanding how great this disability tax credit can work for people. I call it Canada Revenue's best kept secret because this has been around since the First World War, and we're really only finding out about it in the past 10 years.
How'd it feel like you won the lottery, Glenn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a good day and great timing for us as a family. Where we look at this is brand new. This is hot off the press. The disability tax credit is a fairly controversial tax credit. Doctors are afraid of it because CRA constantly picks on them and threatens to audit them for misrepresentation. Canada Revenue loves denying people, it seems, but at the same time, we still have large refunds coming in for families. Back in 2017, there was a technical advisory committee was brought together again to review how promoters like Allquest were billing people for the disability tax credit. We found a company who charged 60%. We thought that was robbery. Our greatest competition, I won't name them, but they're based out of Toronto. They charge 30%. Another company in Vancouver, they charge 20%. Based on the disability tax credit, they ended up regulating and enacting an act which limits the amount that we can charge. So right now we're in the process of revamping everything that we do with regards to how we can charge the clients for what we represent. Doing quick numbers, I think sometimes it may cost our clients more than what we charged before. Previously, we charged a 10% flat fee, 10% for anything that we were able to get retroactively. We always limited it for example, the family who received $103,000, we didn't charge them $10,000 for that program. Once we got to a certain level, we just let the rest of it come back for them to have as a family. We do not use the disability tax credit as our primary income. As financial advisors, Bob and I don't rely on disability tax credit as our sole income stream. Bob and I, we do this because we have family members who are affected by disability. We get it, we understand. And it's our way of giving back a little bit. That basically gives you a really quick overview on the disability tax credit. If you have any questions or you want to dive in and get more information, you can reach out and contact Nicole Bond directly. Her phone number is listed here.